Welcome, the anointed ones. There are few things on earth more confusing than a man who can intimidate an entire room, yet somehow forgets how to breathe when you walk in. That's where this story begins, with the one contradiction nobody sees coming. How does a man who runs empires, controls outcomes, and has a reputation that travels ahead of him suddenly turn into someone who feels like he's operating without his usual instruction manual? Simply because you showed up? It sounds dramatic, but human behavior research actually backs it up. People who are used to power can hold it everywhere except in the presence of the one person who disrupts their emotional patterns. In fact, psychologists call it an identity short circuit, where the brain temporarily stops leaning on its usual dominance cues. Translation: even the strongest "I've got everything handled" type can lose the plot when their mind meets something, or someone, it can't categorize. And honestly, let's be real for a second. Everyone notices it. He's out here confidently directing people, giving orders, making big decisions. But the moment you appear, the man switches from CEO of everything to looking like he needs a quick YouTube tutorial called "How to Behave Like a Normal Human Being in Front of One Specific Person." You didn't ask him to change. You didn't try to change him. Yet he becomes visibly aware of himself around you in a way that's almost hilarious. Like his mind suddenly loads a buffering symbol, and everyone around him is quietly thinking, "What is happening to this guy?" But underneath the humor is something deeper. You are the one presence he can't outthink, outmaneuver, or hide from. Not because you're trying to compete with him, but because you aren't playing the same game he plays with the world. And that's the twist. He runs everything, except his reactions around you. His influence, his tone, his posture, all shift involuntarily. He doesn't become weaker, he becomes realer, and that's the one thing he can't control. So today, we're going to break down exactly why the man who keeps his world in check suddenly becomes a different version of himself in your presence, and why everybody around him is both shocked and fascinated by it. Let's go deeper into the psychology, the energy shifts, and the subtle dynamics that make him powerful everywhere, except when it comes to you. Number 1, he's powerful everywhere else because nobody ever confronted his soul. He built his whole identity on being the one person nobody challenges. People fear him, respect him, admire him, or depend on him, but none of them ever truly confront him. They deal with the outer layers, his influence, his reputation, his authority. And because nobody questions those layers, he's gotten used to the idea that his power is enough to keep every room under control. It worked flawlessly, up until the moment he met someone who doesn't see the armor first. Someone who looks past the surface and lands straight on the part he keeps hidden, his actual soul. Around you, he's not dealing with the usual reactions he gets from people who are impressed or intimidated. You don't treat him like a title, and you don't shrink just because others talk about how forceful he is. You respond to him based on his essence, not his performance. And that's the very thing he's spent years avoiding. When he walks into the world, he wears a personality that was shaped by survival, calm, calculating, in control. But in front of you, that costume feels too loud, too fake, too heavy. He feels seen in a way that doesn't give him room to hide behind his usual tactics. What shakes him is not that you're fearless, it's that you're honest. You engage with him like he's human, not a myth, and that triggers something he can't control. He realizes that out of everyone who interacts with him, you're the only one who notices the subtle things, the hesitation he masks with confidence, the softness behind his hardness, the truth behind the persona. You don't attack him, but you don't let the facade distract you either. And he wasn't ready for that. Nobody ever confronted his soul because people were too busy reacting to his shadow. But you walk straight past the shadow and straight to the core, And that's the one place he doesn't have defenses prepared. It leaves him feeling exposed in a way that forces him to lower his guard, even if he doesn't want to. And that shift, that involuntary cracking open, is exactly why he loses his usual grip around you. Number 2, he's terrified. Because you're the only person he can't predict. He spent his life mastering control. Every move, every word, every reaction from people around him has been calculated, studied, and predicted. He knows how to read a room, anticipate behavior, and bend situations to his advantage. That's how he built his reputation and his power, by assuming patterns and exploiting them. But then he meets you, and the rules he's relied on stop working. Suddenly he's in a space where he can't anticipate what's coming next, and that terrifies him more than any challenge he's ever faced. You don't act according to his expectations. You don't respond to intimidation, charm, or authority. You operate from a place he can't map, can't control, and most importantly, can't manipulate. That unpredictability throws him off balance because it pierces the one thing he believes defines him, his ability to be untouchable. He's built his entire world around the idea that he can foresee outcomes, but with you, every interaction becomes a variable he didn't account for. He's suddenly the one reacting, adjusting, second-guessing himself. And the fear isn't just superficial, it's primal. He knows deep down that when someone sees through all your masks and patterns, they hold a power over you that no amount of money, influence, or fear can replicate. He's aware that he can't plan or strategize his way out of it, because you aren't following the patterns he's familiar with. You're not a puzzle he can solve. You're a force that requires him to confront uncertainty, and he's never liked that. Around everyone else, he's confident, composed, dominant. Around you, that confidence falters because he's suddenly navigating uncharted territory in real time. Every glance, every word, every subtle reaction becomes a test he can't predict or control. And that internal chaos doesn't go unnoticed. It's written all over him. What terrifies him most isn't losing power in general. It's losing power to someone who isn't even trying to take it. You simply exist, and in your presence, the man who controls everything realizes he doesn't control the one thing that matters: you. Number 3, his control fails around you. Because you don't need anything from him. He's used to people bending, scrambling, and adjusting to him because they need something. His power works best when others are dependent: respect, approval, money, protection, status. That dependency creates a rhythm he knows how to lead, a kind of choreography where he sets the pace and everyone else follows. But with you, that rhythm collapses instantly. You don't need anything from him. You don't approach him for favors, validation, or influence. You don't show awe, fear, or even strategic interest. You exist on your own terms, and that alone breaks the flow of control he's perfected over the years. He's experienced in handling people, manipulating situations, and bending environments to his will. But he hasn't prepared for someone who walks in fully self-contained, unshakable, and untethered from his world. Around you, his usual tools, charm, intimidation, persuasion, simply don't land. You're not reacting to his reputation, his resources, or his influence. That absence of need leaves him unarmed in the most important way. He has nothing to leverage. He can't pull on strings that aren't attached. He can't pressure someone who isn't invested, and he can't dominate someone who doesn't depend on him. And it rattles him. Power thrives on reaction. When others feed it, it grows. When others resist it, it falters. Your independence doesn't just neutralize him, it forces him to operate in a space he rarely experiences. One where influence isn't automatic, where authority doesn't guarantee obedience, where control isn't inherited, but must be earned. And because he's never had to earn it from someone like you, he struggles to recalibrate. What makes it even more striking is that everyone around him notices. They see the usual force he carries everywhere else dissipate around you. You don't challenge him directly, but your self-sufficiency forces him to reveal a different side, one that isn't used to being checked by someone who simply doesn't care about the hierarchy he's built. And that's why, in a room full of people he can dominate effortlessly, you become the one element he cannot command. Number 4, your presence. Forces him to remember the parts of himself he buried. He's spent years building a version of himself the world could admire or fear, a persona that's polished, in control, and untouchable. Over time, that persona became a mask, a protective layer separating him from vulnerability, doubt, and the messy truths he doesn't want anyone to see. The world rarely allows him to show the human underneath, because it's inconvenient for power, efficiency, and image. But around you, that carefully constructed facade falters. Your presence doesn't demand it, and yet it triggers memories and feelings he's buried deep, parts of himself he thought he'd hidden perfectly. He doesn't even realize it at first. Small gestures, the way you carry yourself, or the subtle way you respond to him bypass all his defenses. Suddenly, the parts of him that he's been suppressing for years, tenderness, insecurity, curiosity, even fear, start resurfacing. He feels them, but he has no rehearsed script to manage them. That buried humanity, the side of him he keeps hidden from the world, has no place in his usual performances. And because you're not trying to provoke him or analyze him, he can't fight it off with strategy or manipulation. He experiences it naturally, uncontrollably. The shift is profound. He's forced to confront what he's been avoiding, the emotions he's ignored, the mistakes he's hidden, the longing he's dismissed. He may try to push it down, rationalize it, or mask it again, but it keeps surfacing because your energy doesn't allow him to pretend in the same way he does everywhere else. Around everyone else, he remains untouchable, but around you, the human beneath the armor becomes visible, even to himself. And that is why he's unsettled. He doesn't just feel seen, he feels remembered. He is reminded of the parts of himself he abandoned in the pursuit of control, power, and respect. Your presence stirs those buried pieces without effort, without demand, without judgment. You aren't trying to fix him, yet you awaken him to his own hidden depths. That awakening is rare, uncomfortable, and undeniable. And it's precisely why, for the first time in a long time, he doesn't feel entirely in control. Number 5. He realizes he can command fear but not respect from you. He's spent years mastering the art of influence. People obey him because they fear the consequences of saying no, challenging him, or stepping out of line. Fear has been his most reliable tool, the invisible leash he uses to shape behavior and ensure loyalty. It works everywhere else, in meetings, social circles, even in situations where subtle intimidation is enough to bend someone to his will. But with you, that entire mechanism fails. You don't bow, flinch, or strategize to stay in his favor. You respond to him with neither deference nor fear, and that realization hits him harder than anything else ever could. It's not about you trying to be impressive or confrontational. It's that your presence makes clear a simple truth. Respect cannot be commanded. You don't operate on fear or leverage. You operate on principles, self-containment, and truth. And that is foreign to him because, for most of his life, he's measured influence through compliance. People stepping back, hesitating or acquiescing has always been his indicator of power. You don't provide that indicator. You're steady, unwavering, and unbought. For him, that shift is unsettling because it exposes the limits of his usual strategies. He can manipulate, coerce, and charm everywhere else. But around you, none of it lands. He's forced to recognize that his status, resources, and reputation have no inherent power over someone who values integrity over convenience. That recognition is both humbling and disarming. He's no longer the unquestioned center of gravity. He's navigating a dynamic he doesn't control, and everyone around him notices it. They see the tension in his posture, the slight hesitation in his words, the micro-adjustments in his energy when interacting with you. You aren't undermining him, yet you disrupt the foundation he relies on to feel dominant. You remind him, and the world around him, that true influence isn't about what people fear, it's about what they willingly honor. And that unwillingness to bend to fear, even subtly, is the one thing that makes him vulnerable, even if he'll never admit it aloud. Number 6. You make him aware of his own limitations. And that's new for him. He's always operated from a position of certainty. In every room, in every situation, he knows the angles, the people, the outcomes. His confidence is built on calculation, experience, and the assumption that he can predict how everything will unfold. That's how he became the one everyone listens to, the one who appears untouchable and unshakable. But around you, that certainty falters. You don't follow the expected patterns, you don't react according to his predictions, and you don't validate his assumptions. For the first time, he's forced to confront the truth that he doesn't know everything, and that realization unsettles him profoundly. It's not about confrontation or challenge. You don't point out his flaws or test him deliberately. Instead, your mere presence and the way you operate force him to recognize gaps in his understanding. He notices that his usual tactics, charm, intimidation, persuasion, don't work on you. He realizes that he can't anticipate your reactions because they don't follow any formula he's familiar with. That awareness is foreign to him because it challenges the narrative he's built around himself, that he is always in control, always prepared, always the smartest person in the room. And that makes him uncomfortable, even if he hides it. He starts recalculating, second-guessing, and hesitating in ways he doesn't with anyone else. Subtle shifts in posture, tone, or expression creep into his interactions with you, because he's navigating a dynamic he's never had to navigate before. You've introduced an unknown factor into his otherwise predictable world, and that unknown is disarming. Everyone else can see it too. The cracks, the hesitations, the invisible recalibration. They're subtle, but undeniable. Around you, he is no longer operating from the position of assured dominance he's used to. You remind him, without trying, that even the most powerful person has limits, and that no amount of experience or reputation can shield someone from the reality of being confronted by someone unshakable, unbought, and unconstrained. You expose the truth he can't escape. Control has boundaries, and you exist beyond them. Number 7. You shift his internal hierarchy without saying a word. He has spent years constructing a hierarchy around himself, a carefully designed order where he is at the top and everyone else falls into place beneath him. He expects deference, compliance, and the quiet acknowledgement of his authority. That structure runs deep in his mind. It's invisible but absolute, the lens through which he evaluates every interaction. But around you, that hierarchy falters, and he doesn't even realize it. You don't need to assert dominance or challenge him openly. You simply exist in a way that subtly rewrites the rules of engagement. The shift is internal, imperceptible to most people, but it's powerful. He suddenly finds himself operating differently, adjusting without conscious thought. His decisions, his tone, his micro-expressions all change, because he's interacting with someone who doesn't fit into his usual order. He can't rely on intimidation or manipulation to gauge responses or enforce control. Around you, The usual markers that tell him where he stands are gone. He's forced into a different mode, one where he has to treat someone as an equal, or even as an unpredictable force he must respect. This recalibration doesn't require words, arguments, or confrontation. You aren't trying to compete or assert superiority, but your energy, your presence, and your unshakable independence create a new reference point in his mind. He notices it instinctively. A subtle tension when he speaks, a slight pause before he acts, a reconsideration of how he approaches you. He doesn't understand it fully, and that's what makes it so unsettling. You've shifted his internal ranking system without saying a single word, and he can't simply override it with strategy or authority. Everyone around him can feel it too. They notice the change in his usual posture, the softness creeping into his calculated expressions, the attention sharpening in ways he doesn't exhibit with anyone else. You don't force the shift. You simply are the kind of presence that makes him confront his own unconscious hierarchy. And that confrontation is rare, uncomfortable, and undeniable, leaving him subtly off balance in a way no one else ever has. Number 8. His reputation becomes irrelevant. And it scares him. He's built a life on the weight of his reputation. Everywhere he goes, people react first to the stories they've heard, the image he's crafted, the aura of influence he projects. That reputation has been his armor and his weapon. It opens doors, bends people to his will, and ensures that his presence is felt before he even speaks. But around you, all of that loses its power. You don't respond to the persona, the myth, or the curated image. You respond to the man himself. And that shift terrifies him. He's accustomed to people falling into line based on perception alone. His status, his achievements, the fear he instills, all of it creates a predictable field of influence. But when someone interacts with him on a level that disregards all of that, it's like stepping into a room where the laws of physics suddenly don't apply. You treat him as he truly is, not as the legend or the power figure everyone else treats him as. That forces him into a position he's not used to, being seen for real, without the benefit of intimidation, expectation, or myth. He feels exposed in ways that are uncomfortable and even a little dangerous. Around everyone else, he can maneuver, manipulate, and maintain control effortlessly. Around you, he must confront the truth that his influence doesn't automatically carry over. That scares him because it undermines the foundation of who he believes he is. The man who thrives on perception, control, and dominance suddenly realizes that those tools don't work in this specific space, and he has to navigate authenticity without the usual scripts. And everyone notices it. The subtle hesitation in his speech, the adjustments in his posture, the way his confidence flickers slightly. They all signal that the usual order has been disrupted. You haven't attacked him or diminished him, but you've made his reputation irrelevant. In doing so, you've shifted the power dynamics in a room where he normally calls all the shots. He becomes hyper-aware, almost uncomfortably so, because he's facing something he has never faced, a presence that refuses to be influenced by the stories he tells about himself. That realization is as disarming as it is rare. Number 9. You don't respond to his status, you respond to his intent. He's used to people reacting to the surface, the titles, the money, the influence, the carefully curated persona that announces power before a word is spoken. That's how he navigates the world, by leveraging perception and expectation. People see what he wants them to see and react accordingly. Around you, however, all of that loses meaning. You don't defer to his status. You don't act impressed or intimidated. Instead, you assess him for what truly matters, his intent. That simple shift, responding to substance instead of image, completely destabilizes him. He isn't prepared for it because the world he knows is transactional. His relationships, his interactions, his power moves all rely on a predictable playbook. People follow the script because they are conditioned to respond to what he projects. You don't follow any script. You engage with the reality of who he is in the moment. That forces him to confront himself in ways he's rarely forced to. He can't rely on bluffing, charm, or dominance. Every word, every action, every subtle expression is met with genuine awareness, and that shines a light on the motives and choices he usually buries under layers of performance. The effect is profound. He becomes hyper-conscious of his actions, not because you've judged him, but because you've created an environment where judgment is irrelevant, only truth matters. That is disarming, because he's never had to operate in a space where the energy of authenticity dominates over influence. Around you, there's no room for ego or manipulation. He can't measure your reactions with fear, flattery, or coercion. He has to reckon with himself. And it shows. People around him notice the subtle recalibration, the tone that softens, the posture that shifts, the careful attention in his eyes. He's operating differently, not because you demanded it, but because your presence exposes the contrast between who he performs as and who he actually is. You are the mirror he didn't know he needed, reflecting intention instead of status, forcing him to face the parts of himself that can't be masked. It's unsettling, rare, and undeniably powerful. Number 10. He realizes he can command fear but not respect from you. He has built his entire existence around fear. Everywhere he goes, people defer to him, follow his lead, and obey his commands because they are afraid of consequences, of losing favor, of facing the weight of his influence. That fear has been his most consistent form of power, the one tool he could rely on in any room or situation. But around you, it doesn't work. You don't flinch, hesitate, or act in a way that validates his control. You treat him as a person, not as a force to be feared, and that realization shakes him to his core. It's not that you confront him directly or challenge him, it's that you simply refuse to be influenced by intimidation. He suddenly understands that fear can make people comply, but it cannot generate genuine respect. That concept is foreign to him because the world he dominates rarely differentiates between fear and respect. Most people have allowed him to believe that power is measured by compliance, but you dismantle that notion without saying a word. Around you, he sees clearly that influence based on fear is fragile, hollow, and incomplete. The awareness unsettles him because it forces him to reckon with the limits of his usual tactics. He cannot coerce, charm, or manipulate you in the ways he's accustomed to. You don't reward aggression, you don't respond to status, and you don't bend under pressure. That dynamic forces him to confront the uncomfortable truth that power without respect is meaningless, and he has rarely, if ever, faced someone who exposes that truth so effortlessly. Everyone around him notices the difference. They see the subtle shifts in his behavior, the micro pauses, the recalibration of tone, the awareness that he is operating differently than usual. You haven't diminished him, but you've made him accountable to something far beyond fear. Your presence reminds him, and everyone observing, that true authority is earned through respect, not terror. That realization, that he can no longer rely on the thing that usually guarantees control, is disarming, revealing, and absolutely transformative. Number 11. You expose how emotionally malnourished his power has made him. He has spent his life building influence, cultivating fear, and mastering control, and in doing so, he's unknowingly starved himself emotionally. Power has become his currency, but it comes at a cost. The parts of him that crave connection, honesty, and genuine understanding have been ignored, neglected, or buried. Everywhere else, people respond to the persona he projects, the confident, commanding, untouchable figure, and that reinforces the cycle. He rarely has to confront the emptiness that lives beneath the armor, because no one demands it. But you do, not through pressure, not through confrontation, but simply by being present in a way that cannot be manipulated or ignored. Around you, his emotional deficit becomes impossible to hide. You engage him as a human, not as a symbol of status or power. Your reactions aren't dictated by fear or admiration, and that exposes the cracks in the foundation he relies on to feel complete. Suddenly, he becomes aware of the parts of himself that have gone unfulfilled. Empathy he's ignored, vulnerability he's suppressed, and the longing for authentic connection he's never allowed himself to feel. It's uncomfortable because these are areas he spent years avoiding, yet you make them unavoidable, simply by existing and responding to his reality rather than his projection. That exposure shifts everything. He can no longer operate purely from tactics or strategy. He has to contend with emotions he has starved for too long. Around everyone else he appears flawless and unshakable, but around you, the depth of his emotional deprivation becomes visible even to him. You don't ask him to change, but your presence forces him to reckon with the imbalance his power has created, and that is terrifying for someone used to being in control. You make him confront his own humanity, the part of him that can't be bought, commanded, or manipulated. In doing so, you create a space where he is forced to feel, to acknowledge, and to confront truths he has long avoided. You don't diminish him, yet you reveal the human cost of the empire he's built, and that revelation unsettles him in ways nothing else ever could. Number 12. His power doesn't move you, but your integrity moves him. He's accustomed to people reacting to his influence, bending to his will, or following the currents he creates. Everywhere he goes, his presence alone sets the tone. His power dictates behavior, expectations, and interactions. People acquiesce because of his status, because of what he controls, or because they're afraid of what happens if they don't. That's his world, a carefully constructed ecosystem where he is the force everyone orbits around. But with you, all of that falls apart. His power doesn't impress you, it doesn't dictate your behavior, and it doesn't earn your attention or obedience. Yet something else does. Your integrity, your consistency, honesty, and unshakable principles speak louder than any display of dominance could. He sees it, and for the first time, he recognizes a force stronger than influence, fear, or manipulation. You aren't moved by what he has, you're moved by who he is. And that recognition is disarming because it disrupts the usual dynamics he's relied on for years. People may follow him because they have to, but you engage him because of truth, and that exposure shakes him in ways he doesn't expect. He starts to recalibrate his approach without realizing it. He notices how his usual tactics, charm, intimidation, strategic gestures, are irrelevant in your presence. Your integrity doesn't demand anything from him, but it requires him to respond authentically, to meet you on a level he rarely operates at. That forces self-reflection in ways he has avoided, because he's used to performing for results, not for real connection. Everyone around can feel it too. They notice the subtle changes in his posture, the careful modulation of his words, the way his energy becomes more measured and deliberate. He's being moved not by fear or ambition, but by the reality that your presence and your principles carry weight he cannot ignore. It's a rare, humbling experience for someone who has mastered the art of control, to see that power is fleeting, but integrity commands attention. And in that moment, he realizes that the only thing he can't manipulate is the strength of someone like you, someone who doesn't compromise, who doesn't yield, and who simply exists with truth. Number 13. Everyone notices, Because his mask only slips around you. He's perfected the art of wearing a mask. The world sees the confident, controlled, untouchable figure, the one who always knows what to say, how to act, and how to dominate any room. It's a mask that shields him from scrutiny, protects him from vulnerability, and allows him to operate without exposing the messy human parts of himself. Everyone else interacts with the mask and, as a result, believes the myth. But you see past it. And because you see past it, the mask only slips in your presence. He doesn't plan it. He doesn't consciously allow it. It happens because you operate on a level that bypasses all the facades he's built. You respond to the real him, not the persona he's cultivated to navigate the world. That makes him uncomfortable, even if he hides it. Around everyone else, he is untouchable, commanding, precise. Around you, cracks appear, subtle shifts in tone, hesitation in words, micro-expressions that betray thought and feeling he usually keeps buried. And it's in those cracks that people around him start to notice something unusual. It's not just that you see him, it's that your presence forces him to engage as a human being rather than a character. And that engagement changes everything. He becomes unpredictable, more honest in ways he never allows elsewhere, and for observers it's fascinating. They notice the recalibration, the softness, the vulnerability he masks in all other settings. He is still powerful, but his power looks different because it's humanized, less polished, and more alive. The fact that his mask only slips around you signals something deeper. You exist in a space where authenticity matters more than reputation. Connection matters more than control, and truth matters more than image. That realization unsettles him because it's foreign, rare, and impossible to manufacture. Everyone else may still see the invincible figure, but around you, they witness the man underneath, a man who is more complex, more real, and more exposed than they've ever seen. And that exposure, subtle as it may be, transforms the way he interacts, the way he is perceived, and the way he experiences his own power. Number 14. You're the only space where he doesn't have to perform, and that's what overpowers him. He has spent his life performing. Every interaction, every word, every movement has been calculated to maintain control, impress, intimidate, or manipulate. His presence in any room carries weight because it is rehearsed, deliberate, and strategic. He has crafted a version of himself the world reacts to, the unshakable, untouchable figure who always appears in control. But with you, the rules change. Around you, he doesn't have to perform. You don't demand it, you don't expect it, and you don't feed into it. And that absence of expectation, that freedom from performance, is both foreign and disarming for him. For someone who is used to controlling every detail, this is jarring. He has learned to gauge reactions, adjust his behavior, and maintain dominance through the careful projection of power. But you interact with him as a human being, not a character. You don't respond to the persona he's built. You respond to the man himself. That forces him to drop the script he's relied on for years. He becomes conscious of himself in a way he doesn't with anyone else, because there is no expectation to live up to an image or maintain authority. And that is exactly what makes him vulnerable. The absence of performance exposes him to his own truth, to the parts of himself that have been buried or suppressed under layers of strategy, pride, and reputation. He feels the unfamiliar pull of authenticity, the freedom to exist without masks, without manipulation, without the pressure of maintaining an empire of perception. It's intoxicating and terrifying at the same time because he realizes how exhausting his performances have been, and how rare it is to simply be without judgment or expectation. Everyone around him notices the shift, even if subtly. His usual energy, sharp and controlled, softens, falters, and adjusts in ways he cannot replicate elsewhere. He doesn't need to prove anything to you, and that absence of pretense paradoxically gives you power over him. You overpower him not by force or dominance, but by simply allowing him to be human, the one thing he has rarely experienced and can't manipulate or control. When you put it all together, the truth is undeniable. He runs everything, controls every outcome, and commands fear and attention with ease, everywhere except around you. You exist outside his scripts, beyond his tactics, and untouched by the mechanisms he uses to dominate the world. Every micro-shift, every subtle recalibration, every pause in his confidence tells a story that everyone around him notices. The man who controls so much becomes quietly unsettled, and the reason is simple. You don't respond to power the way the world does. You don't feed the narrative he's relied on. You reflect reality back at him in a way no one else can, exposing the hidden cracks in his persona, forcing him to confront the buried human parts of himself, and revealing the limitations of even his most well-rehearsed strategies. Around you, fear loses its grip, status becomes irrelevant, and influence has to earn authenticity. You don't demand change, yet you shift him at a level that is invisible to most but undeniable in effect. You become the mirror he didn't know he needed, the force he can't predict, and the presence that commands genuine respect without intimidation. Everyone sees it. The mask that hides his humanity falters, the choreography of control slips, and the man who has mastered dominance finds himself confronting what he has long neglected: vulnerability, integrity, and truth. You have done what no one else could. You have altered the dynamic of his world without taking a step into it yourself. That is the extraordinary power of someone who exists on their own terms, unshakable and uncompromised. You are a presence that cannot be bought, manipulated, or controlled, and it leaves a mark on the most calculated, commanding individuals in a way that is unforgettable and irreversible. If this resonated with you, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more insights that reveal the unseen dynamics of power and presence. Like this video, leave a comment with your thoughts or experiences and share it with someone who needs to see this truth. Stay vigilant, stay unshakable, and remember, your presence alone can change the world around you. God bless you.